It was the lowest point of my life, and I spent years thinking it was some kind of divine retribution. After last week, I know better. I would say it had been a hard year, but it had really been a hard 5 years. COVID knocked me out of a job that I really liked. Lack of a job meant I had defaulted on my mortgage, and I'd finally been forced to sell my pickup truck when I couldn't even afford gas. I was homeless for real then, just wandering around and taking what I could get. And as the economy got a little better and the businesses started opening again, my lack of decent clothes held me back from much of anything besides day labor. I was stuck in a rut, and I didn't know how to get back out. Not until I met the guy in the three-piece suit. I was coming out of a convenience store as he went in, and when we bumped into each other, it felt like I'd been electrocuted. I'd been doing a little panhandling, not something that I'm proud of, and some nice lady had given me a 5-spot as long as I wouldn't spend it on the booze. $5 was enough for a slightly expired sandwich and a bottle of water, so I headed down to Enzo's, where I bumped into Mr. Suit Guy. He looked like a real business type, one of those guys who traded stocks or owned a company, and I nearly dropped my deli sandwich in my cold water as he slammed against me. I just figured he would bowl past me and keep going, but I was 3 or 4 steps out of the door when I felt eyes watching me. I turned back to find him looking at me in a thunderstruck way. I didn't like it. It was more than most people had seen. I felt seen in a way that I hadn't in years, like someone was finally looking at me and thinking more than effing bum, and it honestly felt a little nice, right up until he started yelling. Hey, get back here, you bumped into me. Get your ass back here and bump me again. I need it, But whatever else he was saying, I didn't hear. I started running, clutching my food, and running flat out. I didn't know what this was about, but I knew that if the cops came by, they'd side with Mr. Gray Suit over a smelly bum any day. The guy chased me for a little over a block, shoving other people aside, too, as he kept yelling at me to come back and bump into him again. And it took me almost 10 minutes to lose him. When some cop came around out of a coffee shop on Melvin and the guy bumped into them, I made my way down a side street and finally got away. That had been weird, I reflected, but people usually treated the homeless like punching bags, so it wasn't out of the ordinary. I sat down to have my sandwich, and as I peeled back the wrapper, I reached for the mustard in my pocket. My fingers touched something else, though, and I pulled out not a mustard packet, but a scratch ticket. I didn't play scratchers. I didn't have the money to, so I was a little confused as to how it had come to be in my pocket. So I decided to scratch it. Why not? I hadn't stolen it, so I didn't need to feel bad about it. If the guy in the suit had dropped it in when he bumped me, then that was just tough for him. I started getting excited as I scratched the numbers, and when I finished the last box, the ticket almost slipped out of my hand. I had scratched off $1,000 on what amounted to a $2 ticket. I couldn't believe it. This kind of thing never happened to me. I had been living in a state of misfortune for so long that a little windfall seemed unfathomable. I took it to a different gas station to cash it in, not wanting to risk running into the man a second time, and the clerk told me how lucky I was as he cashed me out. He asked if I wanted another ticket, and after thinking about it, I decided that I might as well. There was no harm in playing another. It was only $2. I scratched it and felt my hands begin to shake. I'd won another $5,000. That was how it went after that. Whether I played dice in an alley or cards at a high-end casino, I won. Soon I was back on my feet, my luck with jobs turning around, and within a year, I was the owner of my own business. As I started to do well with my small-scale gambling, I let a coworker talk me into putting some money into cryptocurrency. I did so well with it that I started day trading, and when the GameSpot stock came up in conversation, I put my money in and cashed out at the peak. I also met someone at work, a woman with a young son who needed stability, and we decided to start a life together. I couldn't believe it. I had gone from living under park benches to owning my own home again and getting my life back on track. My business did well. My ventures always panned out. Everything I touched turned to gold. By the start of 2025, I was doing public outreach in the same areas where I'd once slept and begged for money. And that was how I came to see the man that I had bumped into again. I was walking around a soup kitchen, which I had recently taken on as a charitable venture, when I saw him eating with some of the other guys at the shelter. Life had clearly not been good to him since the last time we'd bumped into each other. He was haggard, his hair long and his clothes disheveled. The gray suit was long gone, and he looked as if many of the familiar bus terminals and underpass spots that I had slept in were now known to him. He looked up when he saw me, our eyes meeting, and I could see the recognition on his face. The spoon slipped out of his hand, his head following me as the manager of the shelter walked me around. And as I looked away, I could feel those eyes boring into me. I started seeing him more often after that. It seemed that some days, every door I opened, every sidewalk I went down, and every building that I had reason to visit, there he was. He seemed to be trying to bump into me, but I was always aware of my surroundings in a strange way I never had been before. Some of it was just not wanting to bump into people and make them angry, a trick I learned from when I was homeless, but some of it was just being aware of myself. I always managed to step out of his way or step to the side so we could go by, and every time it seemed to frustrate him. The day before things came to a head, saw him getting vocally angry with me when I opened the door to the bank for him instead of just crashing into him, and I was pretty confused as I watched him walk away. I was coming home late the next night when I found him sitting in my living room. My wife and son were out of town, a last-minute visit to her parents' house, and that would seem lucky too. I didn't have security for my penthouse home. I never felt like I needed it, until I came home that evening to find him in it. I was tempted to step back out into the hallway and run, but the gun pointed at me was a pretty good deterrent. He told me to sit down, and I took a seat across from him. I couldn't tell you why, but it felt like the right thing to do. "You remember me?" he asked, and I nodded. "I bumped into you about 10 years ago, just about the time my luck changed." "Right, except it didn't change. You took my luck." I furrowed my brow. How was that even possible? He looked over my shoulder at a decanter of alcohol, scotch or bourbon or something, and said he was going to make a glass before starting. I told him to go ahead, and he held the gun on me as he poured out amber liquid and took a sip. He brought it back, not offering me one, and sat it down on the coffee table without a coaster. Jerk. I don't know how it started, but I got the luck from my uncle. He was a businessman, a compulsive gambler, and everything he touched seemed to turn to gold. He was lucky in life, lucky in love, and everything seemed to come up his way. I asked him once how he did it, and he told me it had just randomly happened one day. He'd been recently drafted into Vietnam, and he went to celebrate what would likely be the last time that he saw his friends. He bumped into a guy coming out of a bar. After that, his luck was insane. He never so much as took a bullet the whole war. Came home, invested in a used car lot in his hometown, and turned it around. Everything he touched turned to gold, and he could do no wrong. He told me that he believed it had been that guy he bumped into, and he wanted to test it by giving it to me. He'd never had any kids, always thought of me as the son that he never had, and he wanted to give me his luck as a graduation present. So, he bumped into me, just slammed his shoulder into me right there in the living room. And I was lucky after that. I was lucky right up until you stole it from me. After that night, everything changed. I got arrested for trying to get you. The cops said I was disturbing the peace, and when they took me in, I refused to stop long enough to talk to them. I stayed in jail for 6 months while they tried to figure out what to do with me. And the people I left to watch my business suddenly decided to take the money and run. I was destitute when I got out. My fiancée had drained my accounts. My friends wouldn't talk to me now that I was broke. I had nothing. I'd nearly forgotten about you, just chalked it up to bad luck. And that was when I saw you again. He took another long drink, smacked his lips, and went to get the decanter. He brought it back, not even bothering with the glass anymore, and seemed to enjoy sipping from the glass neck of the thing. You forget how nice things are when you're living rough. A nice bourbon, cigar on the balcony, a steak cooked just the way you want it. Anyway, after I saw you at the shelter, I knew I had to get my luck back. I kept trying to bump into you, but I think you'd figured out by then that the bump was how you'd gotten it in the first place. I was getting frustrated, not sure how to get you to give it back, and finally, I decided that this was the best way to go. So, he said, cocking the cheap little revolver, you're going to bump into me. You're going to give me my luck back. Then, I'm going to leave. You can call the police if you like. I'll have the luck, so I don't care. And if I don't? I asked, still sitting comfortably on my couch. He shrugged. Then I'll shoot you, and neither of us will have it. Either way, your turn with the luck is over. He was slurring a little by then, the alcohol taking effect, and I decided to trust in the luck and see if it would pan out. Then I guess you'll have to shoot me, I said, spreading my arms out and inviting him to take the shot. He looked mad. Asshole. I didn't want it to be like... But I never found out what he wanted it to be like. He seemed to have forgotten that the coffee table was there, and when his shin bumped into it, he fell forward and through the glass top. The gun fell out of his limp fingers, the alcohol spilling on the carpet, as he gurgled with the shards of the tabletop in his guts. He looked up at me, pleading for me to help him, but it was too late. I called the police, but it seemed my luck wasn't going to work for him. He was dead before they got there. The whole thing was written up as a home invasion gone wrong. The fella had a record, a lot of loitering and panhandling mostly, and they supposed that he had simply stepped up to the next means of getting a hot meal. I didn't tell them what we'd talked about. I figured it would only muddy the waters further. Now, however, I'm stuck with the idea that I might be able to transfer this luck. My son, who I adopted at the start of last year, is 10, so I've got a little time to figure it out. I've started putting money in accounts under my wife's name, just in case. If the luck means I have to lose what I've gained, then maybe I can set them up well enough that they can live comfortably, no matter what happens. If it's true, and I can transfer the luck, then maybe I'll give it to my son when he comes of age. Luck is a pretty good gift, for a young man starting out in the world. Till then, I'll just have to be careful who I bump into.